here from Pine Lake. My name is Vi Thompson again, and I represent 430 people on Pine Lake who have signed a petition wishing to go against the drain. That represents more than half of the lake, and I've been trying to get either a lake-wide vote or something so that we can put this thing to rest. I'm sure you're sick of seeing us come here all the time, and I have been shut down by the Pine Lake Association and the proponents of the drain to ask for a lake-wide vote. And so I'm coming to you after attending many trustee meetings for Prairieville Township and Gun Lake Township, trying to get a vote so we can put this thing to rest. Now, it's my understanding with Jim Dahl's survey, they only received 290 respondents. 160 of those said they didn't want to do anything about the water. That comes out to a 55 percentile of the lake, which we have over 50% of the lake owners, property owners, that do not want the drain either. However, Mr. Dahl continues to go ahead with his project despite any of the opposition. We have also, I was looking over the decision in court of 1996, and the judge even ruled back then that the amount of homes that are impacted by any amount of flooding only amount to 4 to 5% of the houses on the entire lake. So my question is to you, are you gonna have 75% of Pine Lake pay for 20% or 20 of the homes, 25 of the homes that are on the lake that are experiencing a bit of flooding? I happen to have one of the gauges in front of my house, and this morning it read at 893.5. At the highest point of flooding, it was 894.4. And the judge in the ruling in 96 said that even at 894, the level of 894, only 25 homes would be affected, and that would be with regards to garages and that type of thing. And that is the kind of flooding that is there. Now, the proponents of the drain are trying to get things started again by posting pictures of the flooding back in 2019 and 2020. That's very misleading, and it's not at all a picture of what's happening right now. And in the past, when they put the pump in the lake, when the levels were too low, by the time they got the pump in, Mother Nature took care of everything, and we've not used it since. So I'm asking all of you, where do we go from here? Because obviously coming to meetings, it doesn't seem to do anything. I'm at a wit's end.
Thank you for your public comment, and we'll address that at the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
Any commissioner comments? Is there additional public comment?
Good morning. I understand today at this meeting that certain budget items will be being addressed, and I just wanted to reemphasize how critical employees and employee wages are, and I hope that you take this into account when you get to that point of the meeting. I understand Mr. Brown will be addressing that matter a little bit later, and I have had some discussions individually with some of you, but I just want to emphasize we are at a very critical point. We continue to be at a critical point. As I understand it, inflation, while it may be easing, it certainly is not for our employees. I really appreciate the comments that I've had in conversations with all of you about this particular issue. But our employees have kids. Their food budgets are going up. And anything you guys can do to help us keep our employees would be much appreciated. I can tell you that we have incredible employees that are working hard to make all of us as county government look good. We have them going, and through the pandemic, when we lost a lot of folks, and afterwards, we still struggled keeping folks. But they're doing double duties, they're covering each other at different points, because we are still understaffed, and the threat is real that other places and even private industry is taking our employees. When I first started as an attorney, the secretaries that we trained would graduate to the county because of the benefits and so on, and we would train them for a year or two, and then they would come to the county to work. The opposite is happening now, where local and out-of-town attorneys' offices are taking our folks because they can offer them quite a bit more. So I really do hope that you take up that issue and do what you can. I understand you guys have all kinds of different projects and things that you want to accomplish, but if we don't have good people here to run those buildings that we want to build, I think we'll be in trouble. So thank you for listening. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Is there further public comment?
Good morning. I'm Melinda Backus. I've been at the Sheriff's Department as a corrections deputy for the last 20 years. And I know that obviously everybody's talking about wages, but I wanted to point out a couple of things before that was considered. Just in the last 10 years, I take, straight 80 hours, no overtime, no nothing, with insurance costs and everything considered in. Back in 2013, I bring home essentially $13.25 or $13.25 an hour. Okay, that was when we didn't pay. I had zero deductible for my insurance, and I had to pay in for my HSA, which wasn't the amount that would cover the HSA, but still. And then last year, in 2022, our insurance costs had gone up from the year prior, but not a whole lot. I made $13.74 bring home, essentially, after everything's said and done. That's not anything extra taken out for anything else other than my HSA. And that was, $2,700, and then the $4,000, whatever, for the deductibles and the out-of-pocket maxes. So, I had to put away money for that. And then this year, essentially with the insurance, that was gonna go up $153 a pay period. I took the zero deductible, which means I have to pay over $12,000 out of pocket before anything gets covered. And I bring home $14.82 an hour. But if I took last year's plan, I'd be making $13.05 an hour. So that's 20 cents less bring home than I made 10 years ago. So, plus we're understaffed, we can't get anybody to come into work. Everybody's working massive amounts of overtime. So we're not only, when the people we do get to hire, they don't have as much supervision as they need. Because quite frankly, who wants to come work at Berry County when all the surrounding agencies offer a lot more money? The average per hour wage in the surrounding counties, actually Lower Michigan, is around $24 an hour. I make topped out, $25 an hour. And we're starting at $19.97 an hour for people to come in. So we're having an extremely hard time, especially if we had to hire somebody that had experience, try to come in at that amount of money. Nobody's gonna do it. When they can go anywhere else, make more money. They're offering lateral transfers, they're offering lateral vacation time, they're offering bonuses for these people to come. So unless we get an hourly rate that can compete with anybody else, we're gonna continue to be short-staffed and put, not only officers, but the inmates at risk because we can't fully function. We have not had full staff for over a year. Oh, it's been 2 years now. So even before that, we had it for like 6 months, we had full staff on. So we're running with 3 people, 2 people sometimes, in order to try to keep the budget down for the overtime and make it so people don't have to come in on all their days off. So I know you guys are considering, wage increase today, so I hope you guys will take all that into account while you're doing that.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there additional public comment? Hearing none, we'll move ahead with our agenda. Next up, Heather Wing. Approval of conservation easement and purchase agreements for the Wing Farm.
Good morning, Commissioners. I have with me this morning Emily Wilkie. She is the Vice Chair of the Conservation Easement Board. In an effort to be transparent, I have recused myself from most of the decision-making for this project because it's my farm. And I didn't want there to be any type of inappropriate or, I can't remember the word I need. Conflict of interest for any of the decisions. The only thing that I have managed is preparing the documents to come before you and presenting it before the board for the board's discussion. I have not voted for or against my farm in any way, shape, or form for this whole process. So that's why Emily is here to I guess, bring the question to you. So, and she's new to this. So the first agenda item we have is the approval of the conservation easement and purchase agreements. And I apologize for not having the conservation easement to you in the packet last week. It came to my attention this morning that it wasn't there. So Luella prepared it for you.
Heather, we just did one of these a month ago? Okay.
And
So-
the language is similar. The only thing that's different are the parties involved in number of acres and the dollar amounts.
Okay. That's what I was seeing from reading through it. Some rather lengthy documents, but again, and some rather large amounts on those documents, but I think congratulations is in order for continuing to conserve farmland in Berry County. I think you guys are doing an outstanding job. We haven't had anything like this since I've been on the board for 8 years until recently, so it's nice to know that we're getting some grants and we're having a very proactive group involved in that. So, questions from commissioners? John?
I have one. I have it.
Vernon?
It says here funding required, not at this time.
Well, not for the, I mean, it doesn't cost anything to approve the documents. The next agenda item will be that transfer of funds from the state to the landowner in exchange for that grant stuff.
And that was federal funds,
Those are state funds.
state funds?
That's
Thank you.
the,
That's all I
that's
have.
the second agenda
That's
item.
yes.
Okay, okay. If there are no other questions, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the purchase agreement and conservation easements between Berry County and Paul and Sue Wing and Thomas and Heather Wing for the property located in Assyria Township and authorize the chair to sign it.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Getty, support by Hatfield, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the purchase agreement and conservation easements between Berry County and Paul and Sue Wing and Tom and Heather Wing for the property located in Assyria Township and authorize the chair to sign it. Additional discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Next item is where the money comes in.
This is where the money comes in. I'm trying to find my request form quick. So attached is the settlement from Chicago Title. And I don't know where it went. Just kind of detailing how the transaction will go. I found it. And that's where the money comes in. It is state funding. There's a grant number right down there on the bottom. And we will set a date. I will have a better date, concrete date next week when we come.
Okay.
It is scheduled for May 26th, but if all the documents are in order before then, we may be able to close a little bit sooner.
Awesome. And this $657,750 is funded by the state.
Yes.
Okay.
should also note that the easement is valued at over $1 million, and they will be contributing match dollars, so they will be donating a portion of their easement value.
Wow, okay. That's what I saw, it was 1.1 million or something like that. It's a rather extensive farm, so.
So it's a very nice donation.
Awesome. Question from commissioners?
I have a question. So the funding comes from the state. Who actually then owns and controls the development rights?
Berry County does. So the state, it's a grant. Berry County got the grant to purchase the development rights. So Berry County will, for perpetuity, own the development rights of that agricultural ground.
So if one day in the future, the county is convinced by whoever to sell the development rights?
They
off-
cannot.
They cannot?
They cannot.
Okay. Thank you.
They will always, this farmland will always be farmland, and they cannot sell the development rights because of the way that it's deeded, because of the grant, because of the easement language. The only thing you could possibly do is, you know, if they decided that M66 wanted to be a superhighway, it would be tied up in court to get this out of the easement.
Through eminent domain.
Yeah, and the only way you could do it is eminent domain, but you still have to go to court over it.
But if any money came back from this, would it go to the county or back to the state?
It would have to go back to the state,
Okay.
but I don't foresee this easement changing. This will travel with that piece of property forever.
Okay.
It's a lot different than the PA 116 agreements. Those have a finite end. This is forever. So,
Thank you.
And Heather, just for review, who is responsible for reviewing the properties or inspecting the properties to be sure that no development that are outside of the bounds of the property?
currently, it's the responsibility of the Conservation Easement Board
Okay?
and ultimately the county.
So as the boards change over, I mean, 30 years from now, this may not be on someone's radar, but the Conservation Easement Board,
It should always be on their radar. The only other, like, staff member that I can think of or department that may take over those responsibilities would be planning and zoning. They do have a zoning enforcement officer who, I mean, does the inspections for ordinances already, and the inspection they would do for this would be very similar to what they already perform.
okay? So there's not a state agency or a federal agency that reviews these properties?
No, they have the right to, though.
Okay.
David, I have one more question.
Yes.
So, since the county now owns development rights, how does this affect, like, the taxable value or taxes going forward?
So the assessor will look at the value of the property after the development rights have been removed, so to speak. And he will determine whether the taxable value of the property fluctuates because of that. A lot depends on, like, how the land value is capped. When you purchase when Tom and I purchased the farm, it was worth X amount of dollars. And because we purchased it, purchased all of it from family, there is a value that's capped there because you don't have that pop-up tax when you buy something from your family. So with that development right taken away, it either makes the value go up a little or it stays at that taxable rate, depending on the valuation of the land. So when we bought our farm, it was worth, I want to say about $1 million roughly total, and it's now gone over $2 million in value, just based on the recent real estate stuff. So did I ever anticipate my farm being valued at over $2 million? Not in my wildest dreams, because to me, it's just where I live. I don't think about things like that. But, so when they take that development right off, it gives them the opportunity to look at it and see what the value is, and it may inflate it, it may decrease the taxable value. It just depends on all of the AMAR stuff that they use to calculate.
But since the county owns the development rights and county property, can't tax,
I'm still taxed on the property without the development rights. I still will pay a tax.
Okay.
It's not completely wiped off of my plate,
Yeah, but aren't you paying ag on most of it?
all of it.
Yeah, right. So I mean,
So I'm not paying I'm not paying school operating. I'm
Right.
paying like the debt reduction for the school. I'm still paying 911. I'm still paying Charlton Park. I'm still paying transit. I'm still paying all of my taxes. I'm just not paying that extra portion that you pay for schools. I pay that, you know, on the parcel, like the average that everybody else pays.
Yeah.
But I don't pay it on all of the parcels that I own like a business owner would.
Okay. John?
You say that you donated, I think, about half of this back?
More than.
Yeah. Where, does that just stay with the state then and stay in,
That
to
value has
help
been,
preserve more farmland?
that value has been donated to Berry County. So you're getting you're getting the development rights that's worth over $1 million, and your grant funding paid for 657,000 of it, and I've contributed the rest.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have you tried signing up other farmers close to you for, to,
There
join
are
your
two
land?
farms. The Butler Farm that was approved or selected last fall, we are on the bottom of Assyria Township, they are on the bottom of Maple Grove, so we butt up against each other. And then the Carpenter Farm that was chosen in 2020 and for the 21 cycle, they are at the top part of Assyria Township and are contiguous to the Butler Farm. Their project should be approved or should be ready for approval within this summer. I have their final closing documents or their conservation easement and stuff already ready to come to the next conservation easement board meeting for approval. So we are moving right along with their project as well. And the Carpenter Farm and the Butler Farm will be about 600 acres in a really close proximity, and then we're just 6 miles south.
And then the Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy has Eggerstead property.
Yes.
And that conservation easement is about 300 acres, right close to that.
So our next door neighbor to one of our parcels is conserved through the Southwest Land Conservancy, as are 5,000 more acres in Berry County. So it's not just a conservation easement project through, you know, agriculture only. Southwest has plenty of parcels that are conserved that are ag and open space. They just don't fall completely under our radar.
But they all add up.
They do. So we're making these bigger pockets of conserved properties that will keep Berry County with the rural and open space appeal that everybody loves.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's a very needed thing.
Very good. And these properties can be sold.
Yes, I can sell it.
It's just
I
the
can
development
mortgage it,
rights don't change.
I can pass it down to my kids. I just can't put a house on it. I just can't turn it into a subdivision. I can't put a marijuana processing facility on it. I can't put solar panels on it, and I can't mine it for gravel. So there are very, very few things that you can do with the conservation easement, and that aligns with our family's goals for preserving ag properties. Our property was certified sesquicentennial in 2014. It was a great, huge accomplishment for me personally to have that done and to know that that farm has been in our family for over 150 years. We celebrated 170 in January. And so to me, this is just the next logical step to make sure that it's there for other generations to see this is how people really actually lived. Less than 2% of our population grows the food for everyone else, and you'd be surprised at how many kids think that their hamburgers come from the store, milk comes from the store, they somehow magically make it in the back room and put it in a bottle, and they don't get it. And we had visitors to the farm this last weekend, just amazed that you could walk up to my daughter's steer and pet it on the nose. Because, you know, big animals are wild and you shouldn't touch them. So this is preserving a way of life that most people have never experienced or have forgotten about.
Very good. John?
One other question. Heather, does this prohibit you any way of expanding? Say you wanted to go to a 2,000 or 3,000 head new milking parlor, can you do that?
No, my brain can't wrap around
No,
that
no.
many cows.
I'm not
No.
suggesting, I just wondering
So-
if farmland preservation would allow that.
Through the process, we carved out a piece of the farm that is not under the conservation easement that would allow us to change a barn, to build a different house, So we have some space where we could do a few things if we really wanted to. But layout wise, there is not a good place for us to do that unless we bought some flat ground because of the way we're hilly and the water and everything. We would not be able to expand even as big as Mooville in the location that we currently have. And Tom and I are not spring chickens. We do not foresee doing this for 20 more years. There will be an end to us having a dairy farm eventually, but we can still cash crop. There's ground there for the girls if they decide they want to do something, or if they decide they don't want to farm and they just want to lease it out to somebody else. That's our prerogative. We can still do that. It's just, we never want to see our farm anything else.
Additional questions from commissioners? Okay, thank you, Heather. The chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the closing documents and the disbursements of funds for the conservation easement and purchase agreement between Berry County, Paul and Sue Wing, and Thomas and Heather Wing for the property located in Assyria Township, and authorize the chair to sign it.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Carlton, support by Getty, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the closing documents and the disbursements of funds for the conservation easement and purchase agreement between Berry County and Paul and Sue Wing and Thomas and Heather Wing for property located in Assyria Township, and authorize the chair to sign it. Additional discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Congratulations, Heather. And thank you for the work of the Conservation Easement Board.
Well, I'll be back for you in the near future to get the Carpenter Farm taken care of. So
You're going to be a regular visitor then?
I am going to be, I think.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great day. Jennifer Heinzman. She's our surprise guest this morning, a late addition to the agenda, but some timely information that had to get completed, so.
Yes. The first thing on the agenda is the blight elimination grant. If you recall, we applied for the grant at the end of last year, I believe. It's $200,000 that Berry County gets the $200,000 regardless, but because we didn't already have our land bank established, we had to go through the application process, and we want to use this $200,000 to take down the old Baby Bliss building in Middleville. But they didn't have the contracts ready in time for round one, so we missed it. And so now we have to apply again. So now I need your permission to apply for the grant again. Everything's done, we just have to resubmit it, but I'm submitting it in the name of the county. So that's part of it. And then I also need you to if you so choose, to authorize me to be the signer of the contract once it comes in. Or it could be Michael if you prefer.
Okay. Questions from commissioners? Okay, pretty simple request. We've already been through this, so. The chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval for Jennifer Heitzman on behalf of Berry County Land Bank to apply for a blight elimination grant from the State Land Bank Authority, and authorize Jennifer Heitzman to sign the application, contracts, and amendments if the grant is awarded.
So moved. Support.
Motion by Smelker, support by Hatfield, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval for Jennifer Heitzman on behalf of Berry County Land Bank to apply for a blight elimination grant from the State Land Bank Authority, and authorize Jennifer Heitzman to sign the application, contracts, and amendments if the grant is awarded. Additional discussion?
You got it, looking at other places to use this, other than the
No.
Baby Bliss?
No, we've already been through all of that with the Brownfield Redevelopment Board.
Okay. And Jennifer, these blight elimination grants, are these available on a yearly basis? Are they available on application?
As far as I know, it's a one-time thing.
One-time thing? I know we were talking about at the Brownfield that they were giving $75,000. At one point, it was a $75,000 automatic grant if you had a land bank, or is that in the past?
There will be different grants coming available, and everything from here on, now that we have a land bank established, we will automatically get the funds. I don't think that we know how much yet, but they just said for future grants, we won't have to apply. But because we didn't have our land bank established, when this one was released, we did have to apply.
Okay. I just had a question from John Howe in our audience today about blight elimination grants and if there would be additional money coming in the future as well, if we had to apply for them, if they would, again, be automatically sent to us.
I think anything after this one will be automatic.
Perfect, perfect. And John may reach out to you if you have additional questions. Further discussion or questions from commissioners? Okay. No, hearing no discussion, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Next on our agenda, Jennifer again.
Yes, so this one is the establishment of the land bank. We've already established it, but now that we've given the intergovernmental agreement to the Office of the Great Seal, Ingham County, and filed it with the Berry County Clerk. And so now we have 30 days to get our bylaws in order, the Articles of Incorporation, which the new board will do, but the new board can't do that until you appoint the new board. So I had sent the people that are on the Brownfield board. We were going to just have that board become the land bank board. But Michael and I talked on Sunday, and the intergovernmental agreement that came from the state land bank says that there are 5 people on this board. So, and there were specific criteria for who those 5 are, and one needed to be the county treasurer. So Sue Vandekar, one needs to be the representative of a municipality, so Dan King, and then we could choose 3 others that had to be residents of Berry County. So I was hoping to be co-chair, but I don't live in Berry County, so we chose Chelsea, Dave Jackson, and Jim McManus. So I'm here today to have you appoint those 5 people to be the board so we can get our bylaws and articles of incorporation submitted within the 30 days.
And we'll be doing those next week, Wednesday. Okay,
Yes,
at our meeting.
yes.
Questions?
What's the difference where they select their board members and we approve it as opposed to other boards where we select board members and approve it?
We really are selecting these, aren't we? Kinda.
Yeah, in actuality, we are selecting them without interviews. I think you know everybody on these boards. And I think one of the things that land banks have done throughout the state is that they work closely with their Brownfield board, and all of these people are on the Brownfield board. So they work in concert together with Brownfield grants and other things. I saw a great presentation at the MAC conference where they went through what land banks can actually do for your county in detail. And this will be a great development tool for us to work with going forward as well. But Michael, do you have any other?
No, you put it well. It's, the fact is, in this one, because there's specific requirements, and then overlaying it with the Brownfield Redevelopment Board, it could certainly go out and get others, seek other input or other applicants if you want, but I think the goal here is to try to overlay it with the, or at least that's the recommendation. Let me back up from it. That's the recommendation, if you may, is to overlay this with the Brownfield Redevelopment Board, so that there's that synergy, if you may. The Brownfield Redevelopment Board happens to be a larger board by statute than what the Land Bank Authority is. So you can't completely overlay it. You have to choose a couple of folks. The county treasurer is not on the redevelopment, or the Brownfield Board, for example, but is a statutory appointee to the Land Bank Authority. Then you have, on the Land Bank, you need one individual who is either a city or township official, and you only have one of those on the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. So if you want that overlay, if you may, that becomes Dan King by default. And then it requires 3 individuals who are residents of Berry County. And you do have a little bit of choice there with regard to the Brownfield, the folks that are on the Brownfield that could represent, and we just made a recommendation that be Chelsea Foster, Dave Jackson, and Jim McManus. And the context there is that Jim McManus is connected to all of our zoning, so he brings that synergy, if you may, amongst, that's why he serves on the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. So to tie that to the land bank as well. And then Dave Jackson as a board member, and I did check with the attorney, there is nothing that precludes or prohibits a county commissioner from also serving on that. That was a question that popped up in my head, so nothing that precludes that. So having Dave Jackson as a county commissioner, again, to tie, the land bank is an authority, so it has a significant amount of independence, absent the county commission. But it seems that there's also a synergy there that you'd want some connection. So that does bring at least one county commissioner and connects the land bank back to the board. So again, that's our thought, our recommendation. You certainly could go a different direction, but there will be time that the brownfield and the land bank projects will kind of overlay and be complementary. There will probably be times that the land bank may do something that doesn't involve the brownfield or vice versa. So they do have some independence, but to bring that synergy together, that was kind of the recommendation.
Yeah, and we've been discussing the land bank for a couple of years. So it does take a little bit of technical expertise to understand tax increment financing, how it applies to new developments, developers, as some things going on. So that's, I think, why the recommendation was, as opposed to starting fresh, to work with people that already had some background in this. David?
Just to continue Michael's question, this is the initial appointment, but how are future board members elected?
By the County Board of Commissioners.
Okay.
So these will be staggered. As you can see, maybe there's a sheet that
Yep.
shows their initial, and then after that initial term, I think a couple, there's maybe one or two 1 year and 2 year terms, then they become 3-year terms. So and are staggered. Again, the county treasurer will always be the county treasurer. That's by statutory appointment. And then the other officials will be appointed by the county board as their terms expire and or they resign from the board and somebody needs to be reappointed. So at that point, you'll then look to, you have both the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority as well are appointed by the County Board of Commissioners. So there will be some coordination that, and you may find out down the road if you choose to go with this recommendation that we overthought it. I don't know. And that there isn't necessarily the need to overlay those. But that was our thought at the time is.
At least starting out.
I think at least for initial appointments, these make sense because these individuals are all familiar with the land bank powers, the history of it, so it's probably a great starting group.
But the
Glad to see
question
you
I
add
have
more to
is in
your
the
plate.
future. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Michael.
In the future, if it becomes competitive, where multiple people that are, on the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority desire to be on this board, then do we interview? Or are they going to select their own members and then ask us for approval, like what's happening now?
Might be in the bylaws, and I'm not sure at this point
I don't
without,
think it says.
It is not in the bylaws. That will be a decision for the county board. You certainly can advertise if you want.
we can advertise it, we can go with the recommendation of the Brownfield.
Correct.
Okay. Good question, Mike. Took us a long time to figure that out, so. But. Additional questions?
Glad to see you add more to your plate.
Additional questions or comments? Okay. The chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners the following appointments to the Berry County Land Bank Authority. Dan King for a one-year term beginning May 1st, 2023 and ending April 30th, 2024. David Jackson for a one-year term beginning May 1st, 2023 and ending April 30th, 2024. And Jim McManus and Chelsea Foster for two-year terms beginning May 1st, 2023 and ending April 30th, 2025.
So moved. Support.
Motion by Smelker, support by Hatfield. I think I got it wrong last time, but only half. To recommend to the Board of Commissioners the following appointments to the Berry County Land Bank Authority. Dan King for a one-year term beginning May 1st, 2023 and ending April 30th, 2024. Dave Jackson for a one-year term beginning May 1st, 2023 and ending April 30th, 2024. And Jim McManus and Chelsea Foster for two-year terms beginning May 1st, 2023 and ending April 30th, 2025. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Have a great day. Dave Pellin. Good morning, Dave. How are you?
Morning, Board. Dave Pullen, Deputy Court Administrator across the street. I have the privilege of coming before you today to ask permission to spend less county money. So I think that's a pretty good proposal.
Yeah.
So the Family Division Child Care Fund budget amendment request comes as a result of an increase in the State of Michigan basic grant for fiscal year '23. The basic grant is provided to all rural counties, so that's a population under 75,000. And it's a reimbursement grant, and the money must be used to provide service to court-involved youth or who are likely to become court-involved. So for several decades, the basic grant was $15,000 a year. It just recently increased to $56,000 and change, and it's expected to remain at this amount or increase in subsequent years. Even though fiscal year '23 began in October of '22, MySACWIS, which is the program used by the state to monitor and approve child care fund budgets, wasn't updated to allow for the basic grant increase until January of '23. So we jumped through a number of hoops, and that brings us to May, which is why I'm here. I'm asking that the board authorize the chair to sign the amended child care fund budget summary, that's 2091, so that we can begin taking advantage of this increased basic grant amount. It should be a savings to the county of about $41,000.
Fantastic. Questions from commissioners? Hearing no questions, that seems like a pretty good request to me, so. The chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the 2022-2023 Child Care Fund Plan and Budget Amendment and authorize the chair to sign it.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Getty, supported by Colton, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the 2022-2023 Child Care Fund Plan and Budget Amendment and authorize the chair to sign it. Additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Pam Palmer.
Good morning. I'm here to ask for approval to reappoint Mike Cunningham to the Berry County Jury Board for a 6-year term that begins May 1, 2023 and ends April 30th of 2029.
Fantastic. Are these staggered terms, Pam?
They are,
There's 3 board members,
yes.
and they expire every 2 years then?
They're a 6-year term.
6-year terms?
I didn't bring with me, I'm not sure when the next 2 expiration dates are, but I'll be back.
Okay. Is this Mike's first term?
This is, he's being reappointed. He's already served 6 years.
Okay.
I've contacted him and he desires to continue serving.
Fantastic. Okay. Questions from commissioners? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to reappoint Mike Cunningham, 1908 Heritage Bay Drive, Middleville, Michigan, 49333, to serve on the Berry County Jury Board for a term beginning May 1st, 2023 and ending April 30th, 2029, pursuant to the recommendations of Circuit Court Judge Vicky Alspaugh.
So moved. Doster. Support.
Motion by Doster, support by Hatfield, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to reappoint Mike Cunningham, 1908 Heritage Bay Drive, Middleville, Michigan, 49333, to serve on the Berry County Jury Board for a term beginning May 1st, 2023 and ending April 30th, 2029, pursuant to the recommendations of Circuit Court Judge Vicky Alspaugh. Additional discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. Commissioners, we have several agenda items to go through with Michael. It's 9:47, 9:50. Do we need a break before we start into these? Are we good?
Yeah. We'll take.
Need a break? Okay. Let's take a 7 to 10 minute break, and we will chew through the rest of our agenda. We're at recess.
the whole thing, huh? I know. Good.
Michael Brown. We might as well dig right in with the budget calendar.
All right, good morning. Yes, this is a request to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the 2024 budget calendar. It's located in your packet. For those that have printed it, it's on the back side. It's that time of year again. Comes around quickly, it seems like. It begins at this point with approval of the budget calendar. June is the month that we ask departments to prepare their budget requests. And I begin to work on revenues. July is when administration forms up a budget recommendation, which then gets distributed to departments and the board for review at a committee of the whole is what we have generally done. If necessary, hold budget appeals. I kind of highlight that. I think that's maybe a critical, certainly a healthy part of the process where departments have an opportunity to come to you directly and make a request or an appeal of potentially something that I have not recommended, and then conduct any budget hearings that are necessary. And then into September is when we formulate the millage recommendation, the notice to the public, advertise the budget for a public hearing, which is scheduled for October 24th, your fourth Tuesday of the month. The board meeting at that point, and any time after that, the board can then adopt the budget. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I apologize, I guess it just occurred to me. I go through that as from a perspective that I've done it for 28 years now, but I do recognize that there are some new faces to the board, and if I kind of highlighted or glossed over something, please. Likewise, I'm happy to sit down and as we go into that process with anybody one-on-one or as a group and talk in more detail about the process.
Questions from commissioners? I've seen 8 of them now, so we know the process. But okay, if there are no questions, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the 2024 budget calendar.
So moved.
Motion by Smelker, support by Getty, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the 2024 budget calendar. Further questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I would just note real quickly for those that are new, it does seem like a long process. It's almost 6 months. That being said, it will go over quite quickly. So if you do have questions, don't hesitate to come in, and some of them may be answered as we go through the process, but I'd rather have them asked and answered twice than, like I said, that 6 months will go quickly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Next up, our MMA property and liability insurance renewal.
Yes, thank you. This is a request to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of our liability, vehicle, physical damage, and property and crime insurance coverage, which is through MMRMA, the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority, for the period of July 1 of 23 to July 1 of 24. And that premium for that period, the 23-24 year, is $481,247. In the description of action on the agenda request, You'll note that, talk a little bit about MMRMA. It was created back in 1980 by 3 member municipalities. Now it's comprised of more than 300 local governmental entities. I give some historical accounting of our premiums over the years, and then attached to the agenda request form is a cover letter that breaks out our annual contribution in a little bit more detail, and then highlights across 10 pages the limits of our coverage. MMRMA is a pool, a member pool. It only comprises municipalities. That's all they do. We have, from time to time, I've been asked about competitively bidding this out, and there really isn't another comparative out there. From time to time, folks will come along and say that they have the ability to provide the coverage. The challenge that we've found is that coverage is then kind of piece and parceled out, where this is a complete umbrella. MMRMA, there's not an issue that we don't have come up that some other municipality hasn't had or MMRMA isn't aware of. So there's a whole lot of comfort there, particularly when we're dealing with lawsuits, that we have a partner that can answer those questions and steer us through them. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. Let me go back for just a minute, a couple of notes. You'll see on particularly page 3, the limits of our coverage are quite significant. So page 3 outlines all of our coverages, both on the liability and motor vehicle physical damage, as well as the property and crime. We do have a stop loss, and that is, we're responsible for the first 75,000. That is our self-insured retention. And then we purchase a stop loss coverage of $250,000. So not every claim on our vehicles claims, for example, it's a disappearing deductible. If the claim or damage is less than $1,000, we pay that first whole dollar amount. Once it surpasses $1,000, MMRMA pays that, and that deductible disappears. We have other deductibles that apply, but the most significant is, for example, in a lawsuit, we retain the first $75,000 in exposure. Once it hits $75,000 or above, it doesn't disappear like the vehicle, but then reinsurance kicks in and covers everything above $75,000. The $250,000 stop loss is in place should we have multiple $75,000 occurrences. We're then only responsible up to $250,000. After that, reinsurance kicks in. So it protects us from any high dollar claims and or multiple high dollar claims.
Will retention fund then helps fund that 75,000?
That's correct. So on page 7, you'll see that for the premium, our coverages, premium is $440,000 of that $481,000. The stop loss coverage is $15,930, and then we make a deposit into our loss fund of $25,000 every year. that makes up our $481,000 premium. The or the loss fund that Commissioner Doster is referring to is a fund that is on hand with MMRMA. They invest the funds that are in that, and it can be used for, it's your fund, your money, so it could be withdrawn at any time and used for any general government purpose that you want. We've chosen to leave it in that fund, and in fact, we get a distribution from time to time when claims are less than premiums that have been collected. MMRMA will make a distribution, and we have also deposited those distributions into our loss fund. Our loss fund at the time, at the end of 2022, was just over 1.5 million. So we have a significantly healthy loss fund balance, and arguably wouldn't need to contribute that 25,000 into it or put any additional funds into it, particularly considering our reported reserves, which are the self-insured retention, the expected claims that are known right now, and the expected exposure is just a little over $87,000. So our loss fund is in a healthy spot. My recommendation is to leave that and to continue to make that $25,000 contribution for two reasons. One is for budgetary consistency, then it's always in there. The other is that 1.5 serves as a safety net should the jail ever go down. And I've talked about this a little bit in the past. We know that the jail is aging or aged. We know that it needs to be replaced. We are continue to work to find a solution to replace the jail. In the meantime, unlike maybe some other programs that we could rent space if the building was unoccupiable, or heaven forbid, shut the program down for a little while. The jail, we can't, right? We would, if that facility ever found itself in a spot that we couldn't occupy it for some reason, we would have to rent beds to house the inmates that we have. That in and itself is going to create a significant discussion. Myself and you, we're going to have, and the sheriff, a significant, to figure out how do we bring that facility back online, what do we do? But at least we won't have to talk about the financing side of it. We would have access to funds through that that aren't committed at this point, to be able to rent beds and continue the justice system, if you may, moving along, while we then address the crisis of a building. Hopefully we don't get to that point. And if we don't, those funds then, at a future point, a future board and administration can take a look and say, okay, where does that fund balance need to be, and could choose to use those funds for something else. But that's the thought around leaving that balance, and in the past continuing to deposit the funds from our distribution into that.
Questions from commissioners? Michael, I noticed that in looking at 2016 and 17, that those numbers just barely moved. They bumped up relatively limitedly. In 2021, about 20,000, 2022, about 20,000, 35,000 this year. What's driving that increase?
Yeah, so this year was an 8% overall increase. Few things that drove 4 to 5% of that was just a general increase. The market's not soft anymore. Inflation's going up, interest earnings of, insurance companies invest heavily. I mean, they've got, that's part of their model, right? They've got assets that they invest. Last year, the market was just a poor market, and it's not doing, well, it's actually doing all right at the moment. The concern is that there's a potential downturn in the market coming. So, in general, that 4 to 5% of that 8% is just an inflationary cost.
Okay. I saw a line item for police and professional liability and also public official liability. I just didn't know with everything going on in the law enforcement community if those rates have been escalated.
So we do have 5 to 6 new vehicles added to the list of vehicles, so that did contribute some. Thornapple Manor, Harvest Point coming on contributed to it, along with then that added 10 new nurses and numerous new beds.
So this takes into account transit,
This-
911, Thornapple Manor,
That's
everything under the
correct.
county umbrella.
Yep,
Okay.
it does.
John?
I know you and I talked about this at 911 a little bit. How often do they come in and look at our buildings and see if we need to upgrade our insurance? Michael?
Luella, do you remember when CBiz did their last, has it been 10? Has it been 3? Between 3 and 5 years, MMRMA hired a firm, CBiz, to come in and do an evaluation of all of our buildings. They did this, all of their member municipalities. I suspect we'll probably see that again in another year or 2, maybe 3.
So it is being kept up to date?
Oh,
then?
absolutely, yep.
Thank you.
What about insurance coverage for all the buildings? I mean, with the cost of building obviously going through the roof, are we covered enough?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
how,
a-
you know what I mean? It's almost like properties I own, you call up and say, look, you need increased insurance. No, it's capped out. And it's like they won't go,
Yeah,
whereas
so,
actually what would cost to rebuild.
so our, on page 3, we have our limits of coverage, almost 130 million in value for buildings and personal property. We have another 5 million of unreported property. We have $10 million coverage for newly acquired or constructed property. Yeah, we're confident at this point. In fact, John's question follows a question that came out of 911, looking at it more granular detail about the building and structures values. And Stephanie had asked about, again, their buildings. They had done some renovations and then a tower that was valued and questioned that and was satisfied with the response that those were actually accurate and up to date. So we're confident and comfortable that they're there. And the reality is with MMRMA, if you don't have something reported or it's not reported quite to the level, they're still going to replace it. I mean, they come out and do all that valuation. Unlike maybe a private insurance company, if you may.
Okay.
Additional questions? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the renewal of liability, vehicle physical damage, property, and crime insurance coverage through Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority for a period of July 1st, 2023 through July 1st, 2024 in the amount of $481,247 and authorize the member representative sign the agreement.
So moved, Oster.
Support, Campo.
Motion by Doster, support by Campbell, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the renewal of liability, vehicle physical damage, and property and crime insurance coverage through the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority for a period of July 1st, 2023 to July 1st, 2024 in the amount of $481,247 and authorize the member representative to sign the agreement. Additional questions or discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Control One Monitor.
So, yeah, this is a request to recommend to the board approval to pay the Assistant Control One Monitor position, which, for those that aren't familiar, Control One is it's not an office. It's a space at the jail that controls and monitors certain areas within the jail. So that's the Control One Monitor. It's a position that monitors, opens locks, and doors, lets people in and out. So we have a Control One Monitor, and that position is part of the Corrections Bargaining Group. In May of 2018, the board approved the creation of an Assistant Control One Monitor at the Sheriff's Office. And was classified as a grade 3 and initially paid according to the Berry County Courthouse Employees Association pay scale. When we were drafting the bargaining agreement with the Corrections Division, we included it in the new Corrections Division contract, including a pay scale. We then later found out that that was not what the bargaining group, the corrections officers, had thought, and ultimately they went back to their bargaining group on a vote of whether to include this position in the bargaining group, and decided they did not want this position in the bargaining group. So rather than keeping the position on a pay scale that's created for the bargaining group, when it's not in the bargaining group, we looked at what pay scale we had that was most closely aligned and that fit this position. Since it's not in a bargaining group, it's not part of the Courthouse Employees Association pay scale. We didn't want to go back to that one that we originally used. So we applied it to the department head and non-represented employees pay scale. And we are recommending that that position be placed on the department head and non-represented employee pay scale effective May 20th of 2023. It does adjust the rate slightly, but puts it on an appropriate scale that then we have steps that we can follow, and from year to year when bargaining increases, or in this case it won't be bargaining, but when cost of living increases are provided, that this position it will automatically apply to.
Awesome. Questions? It's interesting that they did not want this in the bargaining group, but it is their decision, so.
Yeah.
The chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to pay the Assistant Control One Monitor position based on grade 3 of the General Fund Department Head and non-represented pay scale effective 5/20/23.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Tunison, support by Getty, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to pay the Assistant Control One Monitor position based on grade 3 of the General Fund Department Head and non-represented pay scale effective 5/20/23. Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Collective bargaining, unit letters of agreement.
So yes, following with the discussion that I think has occurred at the board level and some input I've received, as well as the comment that Judge Doherty made and Melinda Backus has made, and others, have made it over the past few months. This is a request to recommend approval of letters of agreement with the Berry County Corrections Supervisors, the Berry County Corrections Division, the Courthouse Employees Association, the Command Officers Association, and the Deputy Sheriff Unit. There is a recommendation after this to also adjust the department head and non-represented employees' pay scales by an additional 3% for 2023, 3% for 2024, and then an additional 1% for 2025. Currently, our bargaining agreements go through 2025 and we have budgeted 2%, 2%, and 2% for each of the years. So this would modify those, assuming that the bargaining groups were, well, let me back up, assuming that the board is comfortable with this and that bargaining units accept it, would move it so that the total increase for 2023 would be 5% to the scale. For 2024 would be 5% to the scale, and for 2025 would be 3% to the scale. It comes on well, let me back up. It's a request that's been out there, and I think in the past I have commented that budgetarily we had budgeted bargaining agreements based on our projected revenue forecast that we could manage, if you may. Mashaya Rose, our equalization director, recently reported that our taxable value will increase due to inflation this year, and we'll have a significant bump in revenue for 2023. Now, we're a little unique. When I say we, the general fund will see that revenue in 2023 because we levy the general fund operating millage in the summer and collect it at the end of the year, which funds this year. So it's a plus for this year. Normally it's a bit of a negative because we're not truly finding out what our revenue comes out at until late in the fall of the year that we're in the budget for. I only bring this up because special revenue funds, transit, Commission on Aging, Park, 911, those that levy extra voted millages, those are levied in December, collected in January and February. So they have collected their revenue for 2023. They will see a similar increase in taxable value. In fact, it'll be the same, except it won't occur until this December to fund 2024. So they, if you may, lag just a little bit. But this request only covers our bargaining units and then the general fund supported non-represented and department head employees. So I'd be happy to try to answer some questions.
When you say non-department, can you explain that?
So our non-represented would be those folks that department heads are department heads, planning and zoning, equalization director, animal shelter, and this isn't exhaustive, but those, and then your non-represented employees would be the deputy county administrator, our payroll and benefits specialist, some key positions that otherwise would be in the bargaining group, but because of for lack of a better term, the confidentiality around them aren't. Anybody else, Luella, that off the top of your head, that
Deputy court administrators,
are in the
assistant prosecutor.
Thank you. So, yep, we have the court administrator would be a department head. Your deputy court are your non-represented folks in that department head and non-represented groups.
But the collective bargaining is all under union.
The collective bargaining is all under union, yeah.
And this does exclude elected officials?
This does not, that's correct, this does not include elected officials.
I'm not talking about commissioners, I'm talking about like Sue Vandecar and Barb Hurlis and Pam and.
That's correct. Unfortunately, it cannot include the
Yeah, because of the
treasurer, because of the
compensation
county officers' compensation commission. So I did talk to our attorney. I asked if there was any interpretation or any way that, and he said no. And where it comes down to is because of the compensation commission because the board has elected to have a compensation commission, the act states the county officers compensation commission shall determine the compensation of the elected officials of the county other than judges, which determination shall be the compensation of those officials unless the county board of commissioners rejects the determination by resolution adopted by 2/3 of the members elected to and serving on the board. If the determination is rejected, compensation then in effect for those officials shall continue. So it's a very narrow that had the board rejected the compensation, you don't get an opportunity to then say, well, we think it should be this. You either accept the compensation commission's determination or you reject it, and what they were making stays in effect for the next 2 years.
So we can reject what the compensation committee, is that what you're trying to tell us?
You cannot at this point. So the compensation commission meets in the even year and sets the compensation. So the last time they met was in 2022 and sets the compensation for 2023 and 2024. They will meet again in 2024 to set it for 25 and 26 unless the Board of Commissioners chooses to dissolve the compensation commission by resolution, which you could do, and then in which case you'll set the compensation for the elected officers going forward. But by dissolving it, maybe another question, if you dissolve it, does not give you the ability to change it currently.
So basically holding us hostage? I mean, basically what we can say is that we're being held.
And I get you didn't choose this. I mean, I get it was a previous board, but yeah, the law has your hands tied at this point.
So this is a state statute.
It's Act 485 of 1978.
Okay, so we can't change our bylaws locally to amend any of this. Okay.
You can't.
Well, it's wrong. That's all I've got to say about that they're being excluded.
Could I follow up with a question?
Yes.
I don't know if I quite understand. The compensation committee was dissolved, then the board would then take over the role for compensating. There's a time frame that they can do that, isn't there?
So, I'm not, maybe this will answer your question, but if it doesn't, I think it's akin if you talk about, there's two elected positions one that can be eliminated, the county surveyor. The county doesn't have to have. I'm not suggesting that, but just by example. The other is you can combine the clerk and register of deeds. If you take either of those actions, you can take them during the term of the office, but they don't go into effect until the end of, or the next term, if you may. So it doesn't fire anybody, an elected official. This is the same way. what has been put in place by the Compensation Commission in 2022 for 2023 and 2024, if you may, is final. That's the determination. And the county board in 2022, when they were given the determination by the Compensation Commission, had an opportunity at that point to either accept it, which you ultimately did, or reject it. And had you rejected it, the only thing that would have happened is that their compensation would have remained at the 2022 level for 2023 and 2024. You could then, as you interpret that, you could dissolve the Compensation Commission anytime in 23 or 24, but it doesn't go retroactive. It doesn't.
It's not gonna change a thing. is
It
what you're
doesn't
saying.
change a thing.
The example that you gave of the clerk and the surveyor, those are both elected positions. I mean, I can see how a board can't eliminate somebody who's been elected to fulfill their term. But this commission is appointed by this board. Why, if you eliminate it, doesn't it eliminate it on the spot? Why do they still have the power to serve out 2 years, of which they're not even meeting?
So, and understand, particularly for our elected officials, I'm not arguing this because I think it's right. I do want to qualify that for just a moment, that Bob, I tend to agree with you that it's certainly unfortunate that, and I think that they should be included with the compensation. But unfortunately, I also have to help steer you all, and I can, I'm happy to get an attorney, but here and have more conversation on that. But your question, because the Compensation Commission would, if you were to dissolve it, would no longer exist. It's the determination that they made in 2022 that continues until the end of the 2-year term for which that.
They did make a determination that there would be no increases.
They made a determination in 20, and you just, now maybe I need to answer a different question and catch what you're asking. They did make a determination in 2022 that elected officials would get 2% in 2023 and 2% in 2024, an increase to their salary of 2% in 2023 and an increase in 2024 of 2%.
Yeah, but everybody else is getting 5.
What the difference is, which is consistent with what everybody else was getting at that time. The issue here is that if you approve additional compensation to any employees, the elected officials wouldn't be able to get that additional. You can't increase what has been established by the Compensation Commission. And unfortunately, maybe the question's, I'm jumping the gun, but the Compensation Commission also can't any longer meet. Their window to set that compensation has been met. So they can't meet again until 2024 to set it for 2025 and 2026. I apologize. I know I'm just, I got about as pointy a hat on today as you're going to find, right?
So Michael, then,
Apologize.
even the compensation board themselves can't, during the term of that 23, 24, they can't come back and say, because of this unusual inflation rate and all the rest of the county is getting an increase, that they don't even have the power themselves to come back and do that?
They don't. I didn't highlight, but
It just seems like, obviously,
Oh, right
everybody's
here.
thinking the same thing. Inadvertently, we've all,
so it says the The County Officers Compensation Commission shall meet for not more than 15 session days each even-numbered year, and shall make its determination within 45 calendar days after its first meeting of the year.
So they could come back together in '24.
In 2024, to
They're
set
not
it
gonna
for
be
then
there.
25 and 26.
So we have a state law that governs the compensation commissions if the county chooses to utilize the commission. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm assuming we're certainly not the only one in the only county in the state that uses this system.
I don't know the exact number. In my roundtables with my peer groups, I don't know that there are a lot of counties that do use it. I would say we're on the minority side, but that's not a fact, if you may.
So chances of us influencing Lansing to change that law, probably not very high.
Probably.
Although it would seem like the current environment is probably as good as it can possibly be. So I guess the question is whether or not, to our folks in Lansing is, okay, who else has this structure, and are they as frustrated by it as we are, and can we have a concerted effort to ask for either an amendment or a repeal of that legislation? Doesn't help us today, but
Correct.
it is potentially a faster fix than just waiting out the clock.
Yeah, could, if the board wanted, I've never approached the legislature with regard to this one. But we potentially could.
John?
If we remember right, back when we were talking bonuses, we went, I personally asked the chair to ask the compensation, and it was in an even year. And they would not meet. Took the chair a long time to ask them for you. And they wouldn't meet about this. My personal opinion is it's time to get a resolution to dissolve the compensation board.
Absolutely.
And we have to stick with what we got. But we also had a 5-year contract with our unions. We're breaking that. So, as you can tell, I'm not happy with it.
Me neither. This is, I think, a slap in the face to our elected officials.
Additional questions for Michael? I think we're in agreement that there's a sense of unfairness. I do like Vice Chair Hatfield's comments because we have met with our state reps on some other issues. This does not seem to be a very volatile thing that's going to impact a lot of people, so maybe they could get some action on this, or we could petition them to at least look at this and put a bill or an amendment to this and hopefully get some action on it, because in actuality, it's a very unique time. I mean, I've been on this board for 8 years. We've been rolling around at 2% for a long time. We have never run into this kind of, inflation, hyperinflation, whatever you want to call it at this point. So when the Compensation Commission was put together, it seemed like a good plan to have reasonable people from all areas of the county evaluate your elected officials and compensate them fairly based on that input. And several of us who are on this, have been on that board, were part of approving that commission. So, but we couldn't foresee the fact that you were gonna have 8 and 10 and 11% inflation, that wages were gonna go off scale, that we were gonna be losing county employees at the rate that we're losing them, and feel like our hands were tied somewhat to do it. We did do the impact you know, inflation impact payments last year, but those are a short-term fix. And we asked Michael last year to figure out a way to put something on the scale. But until Mashaya came in with the numbers and gave us some guidance that we are gonna see some additional revenue based on what those inflation is doing to taxable rates in the county, that there was an opportunity for us to move forward with this. So, I 100% agree. It is not fair for our elected officials that they're missing impact payments, that they're missing that these payments. But I think there's an opportunity for us, and I'll talk to Michael about this as well. Maybe we do need to engage our integrity and see if there's something creative we can do. There's always loopholes within those loopholes, but we'll see if we can find something in there as well, because it's important for our elected officials to know that we care and that we're looking out for them. But the process today is focused on the fact that we have 200 and some county employees that have been looking to us to do something to stop the loss. We are losing a lot of talent in our county departments to competing counties, competing jurisdictions, districts at a pretty rapid rate. We need to do something to let them know that, A, we care about our county employees and that we're taking the investment that we've got in this additional tax revenue and putting it forward to try to stave off what's happening with inflation and try to bolster those paychecks as well. So on one side, you're absolutely right. It's not fair what's happening with elected officials not qualifying for this because of that compensation commission. And I'll be more than happy to address that if any commissioner wants to make that recommendation through an agenda request form that we remove it, we can certainly have that discussion. That's not something we can do today. What we need to do today is look at the validity of what Michael's presenting, which is 3%. You have two agenda requests in front of you. One is for represented, one is for non-represented. And send some hope to our county employees that we're here for them, we're in their corner, we're helping them out. So, I mean, that's what the purpose of this is, that we're trying to take the extra income we've been given from our taxpayers and, you know, in essence say, hey, we appreciate our county employees. We've lost some good talent and we're gonna lose some more if we don't do something. So it is a tough position, but I ask you to think about the big picture as well, that we won't forget about this. We will continue to work for our electeds, but think about the big picture and what we need to do for our county employees. I think David had a question first, and then I'll come back to you, John.
I'll defer that question because it has to do with the compensation commission and does not need to be.
Okay. John?
I just want to clarify that when I mentioned on the elected, I'm talking full-time elected.
Yeah.
I am not talking part-time
Me too.
elected.
Me too.
I can definitely wait till 24. I'm talking about our full-time, and put in full-time hours here.
Well, let's not wait till 24. Let's see what we can do. We don't have to leave it late till 24. I don't know that we can do anything, but we can certainly take steps.
Well, we need to try and do the best we can with that, that's for sure.
I'm willing to champion that with our state reps. I think we can make some progress with it. They've been very open-minded about listening to us, responding to us. So we've got some good reps.
We do, have great ones.
Additional questions?
I'd just like to make the comment that I think everybody shares the same sentiment that we definitely want to take care of all of our employees. I think the sour apple in the basket right now is we're taking care of all of our employees except our elected ones, and that's a big issue with me.
But the chairman's right. We do need to retain people here to do the everyday job.
We've taken a look and from a budget perspective, are confident that this will, the big concern is going out, right? One year by year is fairly easy to look at. It's forecasting out so that your expenses don't outpace your revenues, and then making sure that this one time, if you may kind of bump. Now, maybe next year we'll have a high inflation year again, and but we don't plan on that. We project based on kind of typical, a typical trajectory, and believe that even going out for 24 and 25 is reasonable and sustainable from a budget perspective. Typically, we'd maybe look at just year by year, but in this case, I think it does help in the attraction and retention of staff if it's known that there's multiple years, that as opposed to saying, well, here's what we're going to do this year and then we'll look at it again next year. I believe that it helps with that, or at least hope that it'll help with attraction and retention. We've taken a look at, although we have not done what I would consider a comprehensive comparison of wages across our comparables. Usually that takes months. We do that during a bargaining cycle. But we have taken a look at, and you've been presented with some information, I think, from the sheriff and others over time, and feel that we are below our comparables. We're, particularly as the Kent counties and Kalamazoo counties, we're considerably, we always knew that, and I've always said we can't compete. They're a labor market that we try to compete to attract, but we also are now competing more heavily to retain. Folks are becoming more mobile, and we maybe train them and then lose them, and we're significantly behind the Kents and the Kalamazoos, particularly when it comes to police and courts. Those are areas that I continue to hear concerns that we're just losing good folks to.
Well, I was looking at the pay scales, and I can see why.
So, yeah, when you look at the Employees Association and look at where the start, that lowest scale, that competes with, or doesn't compete with, some of our, McDonald's and that. And
Yeah.
It's a
Right.
challenge.
Yeah, I can see it.
So, absolutely.
We did a wage study, in what year? Was that 5, 6 years ago?
No. In 15
15,
is
okay.
when we did a wage study.
We worked hard to try to keep up and catch up at that point, and then this happened again. So
Yeah.
we have fallen behind significantly. We need to address it, so.
I think we're way behind when I was looking at those pay scales.
I think you always have to remember also, though, that we are Berry County, we are not Grand Rapids or Wyoming, and we just don't have all of those resources to compete. No matter how bad we want to be equal, we will never be equal with them because we do not have the resources for that.
Agreed. This is a good step forward, though, because we have a lot of people who live and work in Berry County, and they will appreciate the effort this board is making to show them that we care and that we're taking the little bit of tax revenue we've gotten and reinvesting it in our employees. So, additional comments? The chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the attached letters of agreement with the Berry County Corrections Supervisors, Berry County Corrections Division, Berry County Courthouse Employees Association, Berry County Command Officers Association, and Berry County Deputy Sheriff's Unit, increasing the wage scale each year by additional 3% for 2023, 3% for 2024, and 1% for 2025.
So moved.
Motion by Carlton, support by Doster, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the attached letters of agreement with the Berry County Corrections Supervisors, Berry County Corrections Division, Berry County Courthouse Employees Association, Berry County Command Officers Association, and Berry County Deputy Sheriff's Unit, increasing the wage scale each year by an additional 3% for 2023, 3% for 2024, and 1% for 2025. Additional discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. One more, and Michael, I don't know if you want to delve into this any further. This is just what you described. This is general fund department heads, non-represented employees.
That's correct.
Control one screeners or control one.
Yeah, in this case, yep, now that position, but primarily all your department heads, and then those deputy-type positions that aren't part of the association for a reason. When I say deputy, not sheriff's deputy, but administrative-type people.
Okay. The chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the attached pay scales for 2023, 2024, 2025 for general fund department heads and non-represented employees, increasing the wage scales each year by additional 3% for 2023, 2024, and 1% for 2025, effective June 3rd, 2023, and increase the salary for the county administrator for 2023 and 2024 in accordance with pay scale increase for general fund department heads in 2023 and 2024. Is there support?
Support.
Motion by Doster, support by Hatfield. Discussion. Any additional questions or comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Opposed?
Nay.
Opposed.
2 nays. Tunison and Smelker, so noted. The motion carries. Thank you, Commissioners. Good discussion, good input. We have some work to do. Public comment. At this time, any member of the public wishing to address the board may do so for up to 3 minutes.
We've got kind of a big day coming up Friday. Anybody remember what it is? We got their two cadets graduating from the police academy this Friday, so we'll try and bring them in sometime.
Both graduating?
Pardon? Yeah, they're both walking, yes.
Very good.
So we'll be there. It starts at 5 o'clock, correct? Yeah, it starts at 5 o'clock, so the under sheriff plan on being there and pinning one of these things on those guys. So. All right.
Very nice.
Yeah, really, really appreciate you working with us on that. That'll get us up to speed, and then, of course, now we have a retirement coming up again. But we're down 4 correction officers right now, so if you know of anybody who's a good worker, wants to come in and get in the corrections field, let us know. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sheriff. Is there additional public comment? I see Sharon starting to move. Come on, down.
Maybe I should start in the middle of the meeting if I want to say something. Sharon Zabrowski, Carlton Township. I'm very pleased to hear the discussion about our elected officials. We've heard a lot of discussion about employees, but we haven't heard much about our elected officials. And I think that's very important. Because as Bob said, it's kind of a slap in the face when they're not told anything that anybody's going to work for them to get them up to where they should be. I think that dissolving the commission now would be a good step forward. And still do a resolution, talk to whoever you have to talk to Lansing to see what can be done. But I think if you make a move now, it says to our elected officials, we aren't going to leave you out there, hanging out there to dry. We are working on this. We have dissolved this, which means in 25, we can do something. It won't be the Compensation Commission. But in the meantime, we're still going to fight to see what we can do for you through Lansing. We have several elected officials who are getting very close to retirement time. Retirement might look a little better sooner than later. And I would hate to see that happen. These people have been so loyal to this county. And I'm sure right now they're going through a struggle of whether, do I really wait? Is it worth waiting? Does anybody care? Is anybody even fighting for us? Maybe we should go now. I certainly hope we do not give them that message. And then we have to look at who's going to take their place when it comes time for elections and they have decided to not rerun. Why would somebody want to run for a position where nobody's going to stick up for them? All we're going to say to them is, well, maybe. So it's not just looking at our elected officials now. It's also looking at our elected officials in the future. We want good ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Is there additional public comment?
I'm John Howe from Johnstown Township. Beautiful Johnstown Township. And to keep Johnstown Township beautiful, our township board is working very hard to come up with blight ordinances. As our county commissioner, Bruce Campbell, will attest, he's been given tours of our property. And the last time I spoke in front of you, I provided some photographs of what blight conditions are in Johnstown Township and throughout the county. When I heard that the land bank and the blight grant were going to be discussed today, I was very curious as to what does that mean? Because when I was here before and asked for county support, you rightly said that this is an issue best handled on a local level, that we have very diverse needs and definitions in the county based on what township you're in. So our township is working with Rutland Township and other townships to find what are the lessons learned. Some of those townships have already put in blight, anti-blight ordinances, and we're trying to learn from them. The land bank appears to be a way to perhaps coordinate some of the different township activities. Because you can imagine our magistrates, who now are very reluctant to put any teeth into any kind of a blight ordinance or a cleanup ordinance. They don't understand what it means to comply. They try to fine people into cleaning up their property, and that simply does not work. The common elements, one of the biggest one will be training our magistrates. All the different townships are gonna have their own separate ordinances at some point in time. And how are our magistrates going to be able to differentiate between Johnstown and Rutland? Well, the land bank may be an avenue for that. And they're also an avenue to provide some grants, because the training for the magistrates needs to be thorough. It's going to cost some money. Each township now is limited by budget constraints, and as much as we can leverage grants that are available would help us all and keep Berry County beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Is there additional public comment? Commissioner comments. Commissioner Doster. Commissioner Colton. Commissioner Getty. Commissioner Smelker.
Went to a 911 meeting, and from my understanding, the tower in Hastings went to the Planning Commission, and hopefully it's on the move. So I will let Vice Chair talk more about that maybe.
Vice Chair Hatfield.
Well, it not only went to the Planning Commission, but it was approved by the Planning Commission. There were two elements of that. It had to be approved as a special use in that location, and had to have site plan approval, and both of those passed last night. So you're on your way.
Thank you.
Commissioner Campbell.
If I may. Just wanted to show this. When I first heard about this, it became very dear to my heart, being a veteran. Bob Vanderbilt, who has left today, sorry guys, a few years back took on the idea of trying to get Pledge of Allegiance in every classroom in our schools. So far, through the donations of the American Legion and Bob's efforts of actually installing them in these schools, Thornapple Valley, Thornapple has all their rooms with one of these in, with the exception of a library, and Hastings schools have one in all their rooms. And I'm coordinating with him right now. I said, hey, I'd like to have one of those down at the VFW post in Dalton as the commander. And he brought this into me today. So now we're gonna make an effort to get these in every classroom in the Delta school system. If we want our young people to be patriotic, we gotta show them that we are. That's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Bruce. Commissioner Tunison.
Couple things. I wasn't voting no against our employees because I value every employee here. I was voting against fairness. And as a business owner, I know if you do for one, you better do it for them all. Or else then you're going to have, they're just not going to feel good about their job. So I, for one, want to see this put on the agenda that we dissolve this compensation committee. And so we can get rid of this problem in the future.
Okay, thank you. And just to comment on something we heard in public comment today from one of our Pine Lake attendants. I don't know if she's gone. Okay, but as this continues to come back around again, like the sunrise, I haven't talked to Drain Commissioner Dull in a couple weeks, but at last time I did talk to him, I know that he was investigating a site close to Pine Lake where they were going to attempt to pump water into an abandoned gravel pit to see what the absorption was and what the field was. That was strictly a test at this point. I don't believe that there is, as she requested, a vote, so to speak, as far as an up and down vote on whether the project continues or not. That will come back before us, but as I've spoken to the Drain Commissioner, I've told him that until we have details, because as we've got stacks of letters continuing to come in on both sides, talking about the flooding and talking about the fact that we don't want the drain, there appears to be a considerable amount of, I don't know if it's misinformation or misunderstanding as far as what the process is. So until we get the details on what a project would cost, I don't know how you can say you'd be opposed to a drain project if it was free or if it was reasonably priced that would take care of a problem that's been reoccurring on Pine Lake for a long time. So, and if it comes back and it's a Crooked Lake type project where it's $8+ billion, it probably would not get the approval, probably would not get any approval from this board, I would imagine. But again, until we have details and we have facts on what the legal lake level is gonna be, because I've read letters that say you're gonna drain the lake's gonna be too low, the water will be gone. Well, the fact is they're talking about raising the legal lake level up to what was recommended, I believe, in, if I remember from reading the engineer's report from '94, like 892, which would be a couple feet higher than what it actually is now, what the current legal lake level is, which would make those bays very usable and plausible, even in times of low water. Water wouldn't go out of the lake beyond that point. But there's so many details that have yet to be addressed in that for us to make a decision on up, down, sideways on the project doesn't make sense at this point until we continue to gather information. So we're still kind of in the dark as if there's a reasonable solution that actually meets it. If there isn't a reasonable solution, I don't see a drain going forward. But until we have the facts on what that is, I don't know that we're in ability have the ability to reasonably comment on yay, nay, up, down, vote, no vote. There will be, if there is a solution brought forward, there will be cost estimates, there will be a public hearing, and there will be time for input before that comes back to this board. So that would be a ways off in the future, but, and we'll continue to address these as they come in. Like I said, we continue to get letters. I've received correspondence from the Allegan Board of Commissioners asking some questions about the same thing. And just as far as opening communication up between the two counties, because they had a presentation there from some of the Pine Lake residents, very concerned about the flooding going on after the recent spring rains. So, but we'll continue to keep you updated as information comes in, and I'm sure Drain Commissioner Dull will have some input as they do that test over in the gravel pit, supposedly in the month of May sometime soon. So that's it for me.